Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. Hey, everybody. What are we getting into today, Trace? What kind of malice you got?
Well, today I'm going to tell you a story about a beautiful young woman who loved men, and I mean a lot of men. And the game she was playing, well, that would cost her her life. Now, today's story was researched and written by Rebecca Hiers, so thank you, Rebecca. Now, let's get into it. This is Season 7, Episode 4, Ethel Marie Beavers. Ethel was an enigma, wrapped in a riddle, tied with a bow. She had many different sides to her, and Detroit police would be left to unravel the threads after her murder in July of 1945. She would die a silent, violent death, her battered body left in a room that was immaculate, except for that pool of blood. Born in Peebles, Ohio in 1920, she was the seventh child of the 12 children born to Reverend Vincent Beavers and his wife, Ella. On July 13th, 1937, she married Donald Barrage in Greenup, Kentucky. She was 21, according to the marriage record, and he was 23. But in reality, she was only 17. So why the lie? There is no proof, but if it could be due to age of consent laws, at the time, you could marry at age 16 in Kentucky with your parents' consent, but without, you had to be 18. Perhaps our parents didn't approve. The two would separate after 4 years, and she would drift across the United States, living for a while in California and Chicago, before landing in Michigan in 1944. At the time of her death, she was listed as married, with Donald as her husband, so it doesn't appear they ever divorced. Donald had heard through friends that she was going to California to file divorce papers, but he was never served. Donald will claim that the reason for their separation was her love of the nightlife. He worked nights at a war factory, and while he was at work, she liked to go out at night. They had a quarrel about it. She left, and he never saw her again. In November of 1944, Ethel rented a room at 66 Hazelwood Drive in Detroit from Joe Hazelwood and her father. She told Joe that she was born in Paris and that the Beavers adopted her when her birth parents died after immigrating to America. She would also tell Joe that she was married to a sailor named Pete who was stationed in Chicago. In March of 1945, she would move to 151 Euclid Avenue to the rooming house of Mrs. Marie Irwin. Yeah, that's right. The mother of Warren Lee Irwin from Season 6, Episode 19.
That's a weird connection.
I know. Go, Becky. How she found this is just crazy to me. She's like, I got to tie in, Trace. I got to tie in to Warren Lee Irwin. I'm like, no way. Well, way. All right, so
that's super just random. I mean, what's the time frame on this?
Well, I can't remember the exact time frame that he went to, work on the farm with Cassius, but clearly it was before this because she's running a rooming house and he ain't there.
Oh, okay. That's a cool little weird little. Michigan is kind of small back in the day, is all I'm gonna say. Apparently,
I know. Well, sometimes the world can seem small, right? Depending on who we run into. I love it. Anyway, so Mrs. Marie Irwin, she ran a rooming house, which is a privately owned home where rooms are rented out, usually a home with 4 or more renters, typically run by widowed or otherwise single women. The homeowner generally supplied breakfast and dinner for renters as a part of the rent. Bathrooms and living rooms were shared spaces, and oftentimes there were rules about visitors. Ethel introduced herself to Mrs. Irwin as Marie Beavers instead of Ethel Barrage. She told her that she was a nightclub performer, a waitress, and a model. She sent letters to her parents telling them she had a job that, quote, required travel around the country. She was a pretty girl, tall and thin, with dark auburn hair, a bright smile, and dark eyes. So it was easy to believe that she would be a success in a nightclub. Quote, she was the most quiet roomer I've ever had, said Mrs. Irwin. And she continued, quote, in the 4 months she lived here, there was never any evidence of drinking. She liked to keep her own room, and she kept it neat. Her clothes were tidy. She had pictures of friends up in her room. Mrs. Irwin slept in the room next to Ethel and said she never heard a noise coming from the space next door. The day of Tuesday, June 26, 1945, started off as a good day for both Ethel and Mrs. Irwin. Mrs. Irwin spent the day around the house doing chores. Ethel had gone out for the day and met a young blonde man for lunch. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon when she was returning home on foot with a neighbor that worked as a waitress. As the two approached the rooming house, a man was waiting for her on the porch. The neighbor said goodbye, and Ethel walked to the porch. The two sat on chairs on the front porch, deep in quiet conversation, while Mrs. Irwin glanced at them out a window as she sat and read a book. Now, eventually, the pair entered the home through a side door and went into Ethel's room. Now, this was unusual for her, which is why it caught the attention of Mrs. Irwin. Early in the evening, a neighbor would tell Mrs. Irwin that Ethel's window screen was hanging out. Mrs. Irwin knocked on the door, and a man's voice told her that Ethel had left, and he would fix the screen later. A short time later, Mrs. Irwin heard water running in the bathroom, and then she heard the man leave by the side door. Initially thinking nothing of it, she went out about the rest of her night. Friday, June 29th, dawned like any other for Mrs. Irwin. She went about her day, doing what she needed to do. It wasn't until 10:30 p.m. that she realized she hadn't seen her pretty young roomer since Tuesday. Wondering if she was ill, she knocked on the door. Not receiving an answer, she took her master key and opened the door. Now, at first glance, the room looked as clean and tidy as it always had. The bed was made, the dresser was organized and dusted, the clothes hung neatly in the open closet. Wondering if maybe Marie was out of town and forgotten to tell her, she took one last look around before closing the door. It was at that time she noticed a red slippered foot poking out from under the bed skirt. Turning, she ran to call the police. It wasn't long before the police arrived and declared the bedroom a crime scene. Ethel had a large bruise on her head, and a man's handkerchief had been stuffed down her throat. She was bleeding from her nose. She had not been assaulted and was fully dressed, but her key was missing. The search of her room yielded many interesting items. It was at this time Mrs. Irwin learned that her roomer's name was Ethel and not Marie. A birth certificate was found showing that she was actually 25 and not 22 years old as she had claimed. It would also prove she was born in Ohio to the Beavers, not Paris as she had claimed. But most interesting of all was a series of letters that would give the police a long list of suspects. The letters were from different men and very salacious for the time. One of the letter writers was Pete Staros, a sailor stationed at the naval base in Chicago. Pete wrote to her in January, quote,
"Hurry and come here to me. Or are you kidding me again? You don't know how I miss you. There are plenty of places for you to stay. If you would come, I would get the best marks in my class. As it is, I am always worried and always thinking about you. It throws my work off, babe. We could have fun."
By February, the young man was in despair and wrote, quote,
"Dearest Marie, I tried to call you many times and finally got tired of trying. Your 2 weeks are up, and you are not here. What excuse will you have this time? If you really loved me, you'd come. I think you're stalling. If you don't want to see me, tell me."
In March, he wrote,
"Dearest Marie, I pray that you will come and I will see you. I am in the brig, in solitary confinement. We aren't supposed to write letters, but I will smuggle this one out. If you love me, come."
Another lover by mail, as the press dubbed him, was Harry. In February, Harry wrote, quote,
"I am glad you have a warm spot in your heart for me, dearest Marie, but I doubt you want to come to Chicago. In regards to the girls, I want nothing to do with them. I don't want to be disappointed again."
And in May, he penned,
"Dear Marie, I am surprised you want to come to Chicago, but I won't believe it until I see you. I have been planning on coming to see you in Detroit. Would you like me to surprise you some Saturday night? I have tried, but I can't forget you."
Max was also a lover by mail from Florida. Going through a divorce, he was a bit more spicy than the others. He wrote,
"It's just perfect down here. All I need is you and Dottie Lamore's sarong. I am going to bed now."
In June, he told her,
"Hiya, babe. Got 2 letters from you today. After I'd given you up for lost. Keep after me or I won't think you're interested. I really miss you. Remind me to give you some extra special love when I see you as a reward for writing me so promptly. Do you want to know a secret? I miss you all the time."
But the lovers by mail were not the only men in her life. There was an unnamed route driver that also spent time at the local racetrack. He kept his clothes in her room. He would visit her late at night and leave before Mrs. Irwin awoke. A chef from a local neighborhood restaurant was another paramour. He didn't leave clothes, but was probably the reason for the screen hanging out. He would knock on the screen and Ethel would let him in. He also would leave before Mrs. Irwin awoke. He also brought her an outfit for Easter. After he gave her the outfit, the two quarreled, with her telling him,
"What do you think I am playing you for anyway?"
Last but not least was an elderly married owner of several Detroit taverns. The man owned some boats that Ethel spent time on with him, and when she was short on cash, the elderly man was happy to provide it to her. He was also fond of lavishing gifts on her. Police found an 18-year-old youth that was also an admirer of hers. They questioned and released him when Mrs. Irwin said he was not the man on the porch. And then, of course, there was the estranged husband. Donald closely fit the description Mrs. Irwin and the neighbor had given of the man on the porch. So a search began for him. Hearing of the search, Donald turned himself in to the Columbus, Ohio police, where he was promptly arrested. Quote,
"I understand they are looking for me, and I am here."
During the interview, he told the police he had joined the Merchant Marines in 1942 and was discharged in April of 1945. He obtained work at a warehouse until June 22nd and then started a new job on June 28th. A picture of him was shown to Mrs. Irwin, and she said that while he was close, he wasn't the man she had seen with Ethel on the porch. He was questioned and eventually released. Pete, however, had a harder time of things. Believing that he was the man she claimed to be married to, he was placed in solitary confinement at the naval base to await questioning. He had been on furlough when the murder happened, and with the tone of the letters, he became suspect number 1 after Donald was eliminated. He also closely fit the description given to the police of the man on the porch. Luckily for him, he had gone on a date in St. Louis on the night of the murder. The girl he had been with and many of her friends backed his alibi, and so he was later released. Police determined that Ethel and he were not married. The other men were also tracked down and one by one were eliminated as suspects. The police were running out of leads. Then, a week after the discovery of the body, Mrs. Marcia Haas called the Detroit police from her rooming house in Saginaw. Now, Saginaw sits about an hour and a half northwest of Detroit. A new tenant had moved in, and he made her nervous. He had moved in on Tuesday, July 3rd, telling her that it was safer for him to live there than it was in a hotel. And he was in, quote, some trouble. He talked about women. He said he had been in trouble and that he had been double-crossed and that she wouldn't do it again. The murder was all in the papers and a photo of the suspect had been printed. He showed her the photo and asked her if he looked like the guy in the photo. Quote,
"He wouldn't show me what was written under the picture, but I went to my room and saw that it was about a killing in Detroit and that the picture was that of a prisoner. Well, I was just plain scared to death. I was afraid he would think it was over and decide I knew too much and that he would kill me like he did that Mrs. Barrage."
She also stated when she last saw him on Thursday night, he said,
"He warned me that if anything ever got out about it, he would make me pay."
So, fearing for her life, on July 6th, she made the call and gave the police a name, Leo Pasquarella. Leo Pasquarella was a 19-year-old boy from Detroit. At the time of the murder, he lived in a rooming house 2 doors down from Ethel. His sister Margaret told the papers, quote,
"Well, he was a good boy. I was his favorite sister. He had never been in any trouble."
He had been working at a machine shop in June, but quit on June 18th and told his sister he was moving to Chicago. Well, Margaret was surprised to hear of his plans as he knew nobody in Chicago. Leo suffered from epilepsy, and that was part of the reason he left his job. Multiple seizures on the job made it too dangerous. He had also spent 2 years in the state mental institution when he was 16 in an attempt to cure his epilepsy. He was one of 8 children born to his father, Michael Lewis, and his mother, who was deceased. He dropped out of school after completing the 8th grade. His co-workers described him as
serious, hardworking youth, tortured by jealousy, and one of the best young men to ever work at the plant.
Another co-worker that knew Ethel and Leo said that when Leo was working and he was off, he would often see Ethel at the nightclubs with other men. Leo would ask him if she was alone, and the co-worker would lie and say she was. Leo told the man that she was his
dream girl and that he intended to marry her.
When arrested on July 6th, Leo told the following story. The two had met 6 weeks before on a blind date. He immediately became infatuated with her, but she insisted on seeing other men. His brother-in-law was a police officer. Stealing his gun, he filed the serial numbers off and put it in his pocket. He then went to Ethel's home. He walked her to the beauty parlor to get her hair done and then went to the bar. When they arrived back at their rooming house, he was drunk. They sat and talked on the porch for a bit, then went inside. He said his intent was to threaten her with a gun so she would stop seeing other men. But it did not go as planned.
Did you kill her after the quarrel?
Well, it was a disagreement.
You wouldn't call it a quarrel?
I wouldn't call it a quarrel.
He and Ethel had plans to go to Arizona that Friday, but that was before he killed her. He wanted to operate a badger game with Ethel. Now, a badger game is where a victim is lured into an uncompromising position, then blackmailed to keep it quiet. The intent was to use the game to finance their trip. She had promised to go with him, but the day he came to her room, she backed out, first telling him that she wanted to go to Chicago, then telling him to leave, as she had a date with Paul, whom she thought she might marry. When he asked her who Paul was, she said, quote,
"Stick around. He's coming at 5 to take me to dinner."
Well, it was at this point that he pulled out his gun. She looked at him and told him,
"You can't pull a gun on me. I'm going to call the police."
Well, at that point, he grabbed her by the throat. He continued to strangle her until she was dead. She was bleeding from the nose and mouth, so he put the handkerchief down her throat in an effort to stop the flow of blood. Then he shoved her body under the bed, went to the closet, removed his bloody clothes, put on clean ones, grabbed his suitcase, washed his hands, and left. Leo was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 7 to 20 years at the Southern Michigan prison. Ethel was buried at White Oak Cemetery in Latham, Ohio. Now, it isn't said in the story, but to me, it sounds like he shot her as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say, what's up with all the blood? Did he beat the hell out of her and then strangle her? Or did he shoot her too? And this is back in the day before silencers, I'm imagining. So how come nobody in the house heard him shoot her?
Well, you know what? You may have just made a very good point. Maybe he didn't shoot her. Maybe he beat her. Maybe, what do you call it when you beat someone with a gun? It's called something specific.
Pistol whipped her?
Maybe he pistol whipped her. Get your ass back here.
I was thinking that when you were saying all of that. I was like, what's with all the blood? What's with the bleeding from the mouth and nose so bad that he stuffed a handkerchief down her mouth?
Yeah.
Like, he must have beat the hell out of her.
That's what I'm thinking. I think he pistol whipped the hell out of her and then choked her to finish her off. I think that's what happened because, right, he had a pretty bad temper and he was quite jealous.
Yeah, and all this without having an epileptic seizure, huh? That's amazing.
I know, isn't that triggering? It seems like it would be triggering.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it wasn't epilepsy. Maybe he just had a drug problem or something.
Could have been.
This whole guy's story sounds a little bit fishy.
Yeah, maybe it was all. Well, no, he had seizures as a child, but I mean, I don't know. What the hell do you take back in the 40s for seizures?
I don't know.
Makes
Who
you
knows?
makes you wonder.
I mean, that was still back in the lobotomy days, so it's amazing he was walking free.
I know he should have just been a lump on a log.
Yeah. I don't know what happened with this guy. This story, though, I mean, essentially, was this woman a whore or what? Like, was she getting paid for all these dates she was having?
It doesn't. I mean, Becky never said anything about money exchanging, but she was using man after man after man to get.
Yeah, they were giving her gifts and stuff. So I'm thinking I'm thinking she was a whore. I'm thinking she was a lady of the night in more ways than one.
I think you're right.
I think so.
She was a flossy, a hussy.
Flossy, is that what they called them? Alrighty then.
I'm just pulling words out of my mind.
It sounds good. It sounds good.
I like
Yeah.
flossy.
She was getting flossed, that's for sure.
Oh my God. I have just really awful, nasty, dirty images in my brain.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Getting
what
flossed.
This woman, so this is the game that she was playing. She was playing with men's hearts, and she ended up getting her throat broken.
She got a broken throat out of it.
Yeah.
Not
It's a
good.
shame.
Don't play the men's and don't play a lot of them at the same time, especially.
Exactly.
Sooner or
I'm
later.
surprised she didn't end up with some kind of syphilis, this girl.
Yeah.
She really got around. For a youngin', she got around.
Yeah, she did.
Oh, well, that was the dangerous game she played, so there you go.
Yeah, she was just a young girl playing a big girl's game.
Ugh,
But it's not a big girl's game that should be played.
no, shit.
Yep. So thank you, Becky. Great little story, and love the tie-in to Mrs. Irwin. I still can't get over it.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thank you, everyone, and happy Mother's Day. A couple days late, but we're recording on Mother's Day, so it counts. So there. So thank you, everyone. Keep coming back and listening. Keep hitting that like and subscribe and share our show on YouTube. I love all the comments coming in. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you back on Wednesday for Round Robin. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.